Welcome to Wargaming Recon. I am your host, Jonathan J. Reinhardt. Wargaming Recon is the only member of the TSR podcast network to discuss historical and New England gaming. You are listening to episode number 220, reviewing Miniature Wargaming, the movie. So if you're new to the show or a longtime listener, I think you're in for a treat because at long last, we are able to talk to you about this documentary that we've covered not once, but twice, and actually more in the past. Way back in episode 148 and then in 161, we talked about the two, that's right, not just one, but two Kickstarter campaigns that were needed to bring this documentary about tabletop wargaming from concept to reality. And director Joe Piddington had come on several times, had talked about the Kickstarter, about the film, his vision, and now at last, the film has been released to Kickstarter backers. We are a backer here, and we've seen it, and we're going to review it for you. But it's not just going to be me, because I don't want you to think I have some solo bias here about it because I put money into the film. But I am joined by my buddy and my co-host, Alex Kostopoulos. Alex, how are you today?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited, not only because we're doing the movie, but because you're here.
Well, I like to average my 2 episodes a year, and here I am, pulled it both in real quick at the end of the year, so I was glad to do that.
I tell you, people love when you're on, and I also love when you're on. Although I don't say what they say about you. But
well,
I do love when you're on.
I guess that's a good thing. We don't need to get into that.
No, it's a very good thing that I don't.
What people say about me, really.
People really do love that you're on. I got a lot of great feedback after the last time you were on. You don't believe me, but it's true. People are like, whoa, Alex is on. It was so nice to hear him. They'd say how much they love your voice and that they love what you contribute and that they want more of you. And I basically tell them that you're not interested and you think everyone's a loser and you want them to go away.
No, John and I have been in very, very difficult negotiations on upping my episodes per year deal. But that requires him to buy me a few more coffees. And, I do demand a very stiff price. So, we'll see how that works out for everyone.
Yeah, your contract fees are really high. And I don't know.
Yes.
We're a small operation here, and we don't kind of have that money that, you might get from other big name shows like Serial. Just not something we can do here.
That's true. There are a lot of cereal brands out there that are
Cheerios, Lucky Stars, cornflakes,
Lucky Charms, not Lucky Stars.
See, I don't buy cereal because I don't have the shekels for it. Those gold doubloons.
Your budget. Lucky Charms are out of your budget. You get the Lucky Stars.
Yes, it's that off-name brand that you get.
See, we need more Patreon backers for this poor guy. He's never even tasted Lucky Charms.
No, I go to the discount store and I say, "What is this, Lucky Stars?" Or it's like, you ever notice like you go to the supermarket and you're looking in. So I'm gonna make fun of Cheerios. So they have Cheerios, and then it's like Tastios next to it, or it's Rice Krispies and it's crisped rice.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
It's so funny that they get that. You don't find that though with wargaming. It's not like you're going and you're looking for a bolt action and it's like actions of bolts or anything.
Right.
Like
no, you do get those like the generic green plastic army men, but I mean it's not really the same thing.
No, it's not. But I guess it's as close as we're gonna get.
Right.
They're poorly done and missing fingers.
Yes, the bent barrel of the gun always.
It's shooting back at them.
Like, oh, the poor guy's gonna shoot left every time.
It's like a bad Bugs Bunny cartoon or something.
Exactly, tied in a knot.
Now pull the trigger, see what happens. Wile E. Coyote appears.
All right, that was a very good tangent right there, right off the bat.
Well, tangents are one of the things that we do really well here, which is why we are sponsored by not one, but two great groups of people. So the first would be the Maine Historical Wargamers Association, and they put on Huzzah, which is one of my favorite tabletop historical wargaming conventions around. It takes place every year in beautiful South Portland, Maine. I think that listeners, if you don't already go, that you need to make sure that you go. And if you do go again. They will be holding Huzzah actually in 2019, May 17th through the 19th at the Doubletree in South Portland, Maine. I will be there. Alex, are you going to be there?
I will try to be there. Portland in May
Yes.
is wonderful. It's
I've been
really.
trying to get you to go for years. I'm
I
so
know, and I've been
excited.
saying the same thing for years too.
Yeah, but like I actually have real hope that you'll make it.
Yeah, what's the date again? What's that date?
May 17th through the 19th, because I was totally not contrived at all. 2019. And do you know what? It's a great time of year. You're in the summer, but it's not too hot. So you're kind of just transitioning into then. You're near the ocean, so you get all the beautiful seascapes to see. There's great food. There's great, like everything, great shopping. Depending how you go, you can hit up all the outlet malls on your way up. And there's just really great people there who both run it and play in it. A lot of great games, a lot of fun times we have. It is family friendly, but it's an adult geared convention. So like you're actually able to like buy a beer or other alcoholic adult beverages to drink while you game, which is kind of crazy for some conventions. And just people get along. They're very respectful. You have all sorts of variety of games, and they're such a great group of people. I am very grateful to them for their support of the show, and I can't wait to go back. And our mutual friend Adrian will be going as well. And this is just, it's going to be a great time. So we'll be doing a
I
live
have a
show
question on that. I have a question there. Can I get
about,
a lobster roll there?
you could,
Did they not at the convention? Are you kidding me?
I believe so.
Really? Wow.
They're
Okay.
like 5 steps from, well, not literally 5 steps, but they're pretty close to the waterfront.
I mean, I've always wanted to do some gaming with a lobster roll in hand.
Hey, there you go.
So, and Maine, I mean, it's Maine. So that's the other, I mean, it's a Maine lobster roll. It's a truly authentic. All right. We'll give this some thought.
New England's vacation land,
Yes.
mere 2-minute drive from the Portland Jetway. So you could fly in if you're from out of town and you don't want to drive or take a boat or whatever. You just go right in. It's really easy. And it's across the street from the main mall. So lots of great shopping, more affordable eating. And I love it. I really do. I get so giddy about it. Go on, laugh it up for a ball.
No, what I like is also in your when you have the ads running. I know you're doing them live now, which is great, but you always would say huzzah.
Yeah.
That's what I think about a lot is when I hear that.
I don't know how I feel about you thinking about me saying huzzah. Those ads they're a lot of work, but they're fun to do.
They are good. They're memorable. That's the important thing when you're doing advertising. It is memorable.
Sure, we'll go with that. I think one hopes it's good, but we'll go with memorable.
No, because bad but memorable is still you remember the ad. That's the whole point of advertising.
But that's like when the queen says, "Oh, that's interesting." What does that mean? Like, is interesting good? Interesting bad? Like, did you just put your foot in your mouth, or you kick someone? You push an old lady down the stairs? Like, oh, interesting what?
I think if you make the point of remembering the thing you were advertising, which you do with huzzah, it's you've done your job.
Okay. We're also proudly sponsored by the kind folks who put on Enfilade, which will be held May 24th through the 26th, 2019, at the Red Lion Inn in Olympia, Washington. It is the largest historical miniatures wargaming convention west of the Mississippi. Great group of people who put this on. It's on my bucket list of conventions that I want to get to because I've never been. But really, so many people who are dedicated to providing quality historical tabletop wargaming. They put on events out there. Lots of great games. They actually did Teutoburg Forest last year. Well, this year, 2018. Alyssa Faden was a motivating force for it, and she's actually one of the organizers for the event. And I tell you, I saw pictures, and it looked beautiful, but it was a different take actually on the battle. A little less wooded than a lot of people kind of go with it. People do a lot of dense forests and don't leave a whole lot of room for your units to move around. But you had some pretty wide avenues in there and some different outcomes than you might historically expect. So that's pretty cool. But they do a lot of just really great things, and a lot of it's scratch built. I'm just amazed at the talent that they have, where they take stuff, all these raw materials, and then in no time flat, you go and you see this table, and it's beautiful. It looks like museum quality, and they're just amazing. Blows my mind, really.
It's absolutely incredible to watch that, and that's actually not to segue, but that's one of the themes that I want to hit upon, or what we're going to talk about with the
blowing your mind.
Yeah, no, about the scratch build stuff and just how beautiful it really can be. But that's great. I mean, I've seen pictures from there as well, and I mean, it just looks amazing.
A thing that I like about both of these conventions, although like I said, I haven't been to Enfilade, but from what I've learned from speaking with people who've been to there and seeing stuff, they're both moderately sized, so they're not like gigantic. They're not going to be overwhelming. They're very comfortable, I think. They're very welcoming and friendly and very accessible. So it's good entry level for people to kind of get into if you haven't done the whole con scene before and you want to try, so that you can do and feel like you're not doing too much. Like, what the heck did I get myself into? But still big enough that there's a wide variety of things for you to do. So you won't just be bored and be like, oh, I only wanted to do one thing. Why am I here now?
Sure.
There's tons of things for you to pick. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing for any convention, is to be that newbie friendly. And I realize some are not targeted for that specifically because there's tournaments or whatever else. But it is pretty cool when anybody can just walk in and sort of like have that be the gateway to the hobby, which is kind of cool. One other thing I wanted to say though is you don't really have a sing-songy tagline for this. So I'm wondering maybe you can give us a sing-songy tagline, if you would.
For Enfilade?
Yeah. I mean, you did the Huzzah one. You got to do this one.
Yeah, but see, when I do Enfilade, I'm always like, for Enfilade!
That's good. Oh, there you go. That's
not sing-songy, but you kind of get that whole like, in my head, I always picture just like a bunch of guys like going up and be like, what do you think? Should we just unload on them? And like they're getting their muskets or whatever ready, and like one moron doesn't wait for the order and goes pow, and everyone's like, what? Well, I guess we shoot now. And then you just see and then the cloudburst of people shooting, and like the other side's like, oh bleep. That's just what I always picture.
And then you jump out and say, Enfilade.
All like happy, like, yay.
Lovely.
There you go.
We are doing well here.
We love the cheese factor, don't we? we talked about that recently, actually. It's weird if it's not there, and I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I think it's just our natural makeup. And when you put the two of us in a virtual room together, the cheese flies high.
Who doesn't love a good brie?
God. Keep moving.
Actually, my other show that I don't do anymore, Geeks Explicitly, did a whole episode about cheese. It did another one about ice cream. They're not necessarily family friendly though, so I don't advise people listen to them, but I'm quite passionate about food.
Yeah, well, you know, food's good. I have my feelings about ice cream. We've actually, you and I have sat in a Friendlies and had an argument about what was the proper Friendlies friendly Sunday, right? Like which was the more chocolatey version. And I don't even remember exactly what we were debating, but
I just remember you were wrong as usual.
Yeah, right. I figured you were going to say that. I think the one thing we could agree on was that a healthy dose of extra peanut butter sauce was necessary.
I would concur on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
You have the right ratio. In ratio actually comes into play with the movie that we're going to be talking about. Ratio of historical content to human interest, to positivity, to negativity, to journey, compared to just the end result. There's a lot of spectrums here, I think, in the film. And I don't know about you, but I really feel like it does take you on this journey so that you do go along and you progress with the people on the screen.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's equal parts human interest story, historical education, introduction into the hobby itself, and I really think that they blended that very nicely. I found myself kind of really emotionally tied to the guys that they were focusing on. Specifically, obviously, I'm not going to call them what do you call them in a documentary? You don't call them characters, really. It was Chris, and I forget the other gentleman's name. Was it Andy? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, Andy Bryant.
Yeah,
and Chris Nichols.
Yes, so it was them, and like you really feel their struggles throughout that whole thing. It's pretty intense. It can be pretty intense at times.
Well, there was one scene in particular that quite a few people who I've spoken with tend to kind of hone in on, and I wonder if it's one that really kind of pinpointed for you too. And it's with Chris Nichols when his partner and he are having, I'm going to be polite, they're having a discussion about finances and how to handle a situation with the business. And I don't know about you, but like just watching it, I felt really awkward because I felt as if I was there while they're having this discussion.
Sure.
And I talked with the director about it a little bit, and he's like, I was there, like just filming, and they happen to be having this discussion. And it's like, what do? You do in a documentary, you don't just say, okay, I'm gonna go get a pint for 20 minutes and come back. Like you stay. It's what you gotta do. But it had to have been so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I did watch the behind the scenes, and he does kind of bring that up too, saying that that was obviously very strange to be sitting there and having to deal with that, and it's real people. And that was another thing that I really liked about this is that sometimes you watch a documentary and it's interesting because you're learning something. And then there's other times when you watch a documentary, I think like this one, where you realize that they are really just you. They're the same. Really the same everything. Like I look at myself and I'm like, geez, if I lived in the UK, that would essentially be me, and I'd probably be playing games with these guys side by side. If assuming we were in the same town or whatever. But do you know what I mean? Like, and I like you really you struggle with them, you understand them. For anybody who's ever created in this industry, you really can grab onto them and kind of roll with the whole story a little bit.
Not to do like a compare contrast with other films out there, but the documentary that I'm in about tabletop gaming in general, I spoke when I spoke with the director of that, Stephen Wallet of Nerd Rage News. One of the things that he had told to me that kind of came back as feedback from some of the early film festivals and some of the early showings of it was that for him they wanted, oddly enough, for documentaries, they want a strong human interest, a strong human narrative there. So whether you have like a single person who's kind of serves as the every man, every woman that the viewer travels along with, or a group of stories, but they want something more than just, something that you and I would see on the History Channel where they're talking about a battle, like this is what happened and this and that. They actually want you to be drawn in so that you do have that connection and that emotional investment. And I agree with you. This film had that in spades, and I think it was beautifully handled. It was very respectful, and it was honest too. There's one part with Andy Bryant near the end, and I'm not ashamed to say I cried several times watching this movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, right.
He's talking about his struggles with, over there they call it combat stress, but PTSD, and just being in the guard shack with his weapon. And I'm sitting in bed watching it on my computer, and just like the tears are streaming down my face, and I can't even imagine what this guy had gone through. But you really felt for him, and you could tell that like he's trying to be brave and like convey it to try to help people and share his story, but that at the same time, like he doesn't just want to break down, that any moment he could crack. And just how the film handled it, I thought it was very mature and honest, but also, and I have to underline this, very respectful because, like you said, these are people. It's not just, someone portraying an emotion, portraying a situation, and then you say cut, and then you move on, and things are done. Like they have to live with this every single day, and
Right.
so you don't want to just treat them ill. That's would be terrible, and I feel certain that's not what the director had in mind with any of this. But I just thought he was just very caring and loving with how he handled these stories.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done in that regard too. But it brought up an interesting question for me while I was watching it, and the question really, I'll pose it this way: the dichotomy and the differences, I guess, between uh, being someone who served in the military and then those of us who play war games. And I know that there's obviously some overlap. Of course, there's some folks who have done military service and uh, now play war games for fun. But there's some level of being just a regular civilian and playing war gamers, and then you see somebody who really deals with this stuff on a very real level. Uh, you almost second guess sometimes, and you know, like, am I making too much of a game of this sometimes? Is this okay? You know, and it made me start to wonder a little bit, and I know that that's probably just my own weirdness in my own head, but I don't know. Did that come across to you at all? Do you think about that ever?
Well, do you know, I think that they did kind of touch on that a little bit, and I don't know how much that was developed or how much they intended to develop that. But I feel that especially with historical wargaming, and obviously in the documentary, they talk about historicals a fair bit. But when you deal with and I'm trying to remember the gentlemen's names, the two guys who are friends, Adam and Matthew, who were going on that journey, they're talking about bolt action, but there was a lot of talk about like sci-fi gaming, Warhammer, sort of stuff, where that's more of a fantasy pulp sci-fi field. I don't think you get it as much, but with historicals, I think there's a very strong um, group, I guess you could say, of people who are either military or military adjacent, who want to be respectful of it, and that I think there's this blending of both using it as educational and study and personal interest and personal enrichment, but also as fun. And I've often wondered, like, where is there a line? Like, is it appropriate to do this sort of stuff? So, like, I know I've talked with our friend Adrian, and people like playing this newer rule set called Force on Force by Osprey Games, where it's a modern war setup, and he just has no interest of playing that if he's playing as a terrorist, because for him that's just kind of anathema. And I think some people of a certain age, like my father, he is retired military, and he was over in Vietnam, and he's not into this kind of stuff in general, but if he were, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want to be playing Battlefront's game, Battlefield Vietnam, as Viet Cong. I think that
Yeah,
would just be really hard for him.
right. It's of course, and I think that it's an interesting angle on the whole thing. And the other thing that I was thinking about too is, you know, the tournament gaming, you know, with historicals. And I know it happens. I know it's a thing. I know there's lots of bolt action and that sort of stuff, and that's fantastic. But again, it sort of just these questions sort of bubbled up for me a little bit, and I just started thinking about, is it too much of a game? Sometimes, I mean, we're talking about some serious atrocities at points, and is it always done well and done respectfully? Who knows? You know, I don't know. These are just, again, the questions that I ask myself when I sit there and watch a movie like this. But it really
I think
didn't.
the answer is no,
Probably not. Yeah.
because I think for most people, it's a game,
It's
and I
a
mean it is.
Yep.
I don't think you necessarily need to make more of it than what it is, but I think if you are playing the game and it's recreating an actual or attempting to recreate or pay homage to an actual situation that happened, not just a conflict, but something more specific, an actual skirmish or battle or whatever. I think it's kind of important for people to have a connection to what existed. And oftentimes with the historicals that I played, whether it's been like a convention game or something larger where there's a lot of people involved, the organizer or the game master might have like a shortened kind of synopsis of the battle to
Mhm.
kind of help frame it for you.
Sure.
And even at minimum, often, like, you know, you need to name your adventure game or whatever, and they'll give it the name of the actual battle or the actual skirmish or whatever. So you can kind of dig into that if you have any interest in it. And it just it places you, I think, there. So even if only for a moment you're like, oh, this has happened, and you think of the people who were involved with it and what they may have gone through, and then you're done, and then you spend the next 4 or 5 or 6 hours just moving your figures around and rolling dice and be like, yeah, go get them or whatever. But for the brief moment, I think it still kind of grounds you for a little bit, and I think that's really good. And obviously, if you're doing like a fantasy or a sci-fi kind of game, that doesn't exist because, I
Right.
mean, what are you gonna be like? Well, the aliens and Terminators are doing whatever. Like, you can't frame that so much. I don't think it has as much of an impact. But I also think that's why those kind of games have more of a draw to a younger
Sure.
audience,
Yep.
where they don't want to get into, because the others kind of maybe too much like school for them.
Well, I'll tell you. So, you know, I'm a big fantasy guy, and that's my escape, right?
Mm.
It's the escape from the serious and the hard and stuff like that. And really, you know, in watching this, I think that's it. I'm commending the movie in that it forces me to ask these questions, because it made me stop and think, and on a number of different levels. And this is just one that we're touching upon right now. And when you see the gaming and you juxtapose it with someone who is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, that's where the pause happened, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a real thing. People really do. I mean, and I know that, but and then seeing it in the light with gaming. But for him, for his sake, right? He talks about levels of depression and through all that, and this is therapy for him. And this is something you've talked about as well, right? I mean, so and I think that a lot of people can relate to this. So there's definitely an upside as well. It's just like I said, my own head goes spinning when I see something that makes me think a little bit.
I'm really glad that they had Andy on and that he was willing and able to talk about kind of his dealings in conflict with that kind of stuff, because I have a strong suspicion, and I can't prove it as of yet, but I really do have a strong suspicion that if you were to dig into the wider umbrella of tabletop gaming, that I think there's a disproportionate number of people who participate in that who have some sort of, and there's no judgment behind this, but I'm just going to use the term mental illness or mental whatever, who are gamers compared to the general population. And I don't know what that means. It's just kind of my own internal suspicion, but I think it's really helpful because this has been stigmatized for so long as being something you don't talk about, you don't let anybody know. And like, it's a failure on the person's part to see that that's not the case. And so that you have more and more people taking the spotlight and being willing to share their experiences about it. So I really do feel that Andy was very brave for doing that. And I think that he did and can do a lot of good by being part of the project and sharing his story with that, and how not just what he had gone through, but also kind of how like this helps him as a potential avenue. And I mean, it's different for everyone, but just to kind of know that there are other people like you and that these things might be of help, I think can be a good thing.
Absolutely, and to flip it a little bit on Chris's side of things, it's that creative. I'll call it creative torture, right? He has these ideas he wants to produce, and he has produced certainly at some level, but a large arc of the story is wanting to get something else out, and that I think that's another thing that a lot of people in the hobby can relate to, right? I mean, at some point in time, we're all creators of some kind, and whether you're just creating for your own sake, for your own terrain or anything like that, or if you have larger ideas of, hey, I'd love to take this public and try to, make some money off this, or if you're creating content in a podcast, or really any of this stuff. I think about the guys at Cigar Box doing their math. Like everyone's just a regular dude or dudette, I guess, putting themselves out there and just trying to put what they love to do out to everybody else. And that's just another big theme that hit home with me. And you even see, they touch upon it with was it the Beast of War guys and the mini wargaming guys, and those guys, they're obviously they do really, really high quality, great videos. But they all started with just this idea, right? And this thing that they wanted to do, and this hobby that they loved, and they wanted to share it. And I just really respect that. I really respect the people that are willing to just kind of stick themselves out there and take the risk, both creatively, emotionally, and financially. So again, I think that was another big theme that I was able to sort of immediately latch onto and really enjoy.
I think it's interesting because what you're highlighting there, I think, tends to disprove this kind of mythos that gamers might have, where these companies or people involved in the industry or at that kind of level, that they're involved in these larger corporations, right? People think of like a Games Workshop, they think of like Wizards of the Coast, which is really a Hasbro, which is really keep on going all the way up the chain. Or they think about like Warlord or whatever, like these much larger entities, when really most of the space is filled by people who are doing either full-time or part-time jobs, who then do this on the side. The case of Chris with Macrocosm, I think it's amazing that he's able to do this as his full-time job. And I mean, he explains in the documentary how they're able to do it partly because they live so frugally. They grow their own food. They have the secondhand furniture. Like they don't go all and get the newest whatever. And I actually think that's a great lesson for a lot of us because I think we're kind of all caught up in this consumerism, especially with the hobby. It's always look at this new game, look at this shiny new whatever. Here's the next thing, and I'm going to take some blame for that. I think you get to things like a Beast of War, you get to some of the magazines out there, you get to the podcasts like this, and where we're talking about whatever the next new fashionable thing is. I think there's pressure put on people to feel like, oh, I need this new game. I need to have this new whatever so that I can be part. And so you're always bouncing, right, to try to get to whatever the next thing is. And the companies, of course, really push it because they know there's going to be some sort of fatigue eventually, or maybe they get bored and they don't want to support whatever the stuff is. So they pivot to a new rule system or a new edition, or like you look at, geez, X-Wing, and I'm not going to dive deep into that, but for many reasons, they just said, okay, first edition is whatever. You can't use the stuff unless you buy the conversion kits. And then here's all the new things. And like, we're restarting everything. And I think when you feel like you always have to have the next new thing, whether it's for gaming or the next new phone or the hottest new car or the best new computer or whatever, I think you end up with a lot of stuff. And I think you feel that you really don't get happy by having this. I think it's not necessarily a great way to live. And I also think it's really bad for the environment and for the planet on which we all happen to be. And so seeing someone like Chris say, do you know what? Maybe you don't need to be happy by having all these fancy new things. Maybe you can have secondhand furniture and, reuse and upcycle things and grow your own food or as much as you can and kind of do this kind of stuff. I think that's really empowering. It kind of takes power back. And it's almost kind of like Renegade, right? You're fighting against the machine and you're just kind of doing this. And I think you kind of have that great kind of patriot spirit there that he emboldens, but it has to be really hard for them. And I think also that by like showing this, because people kind of have, I think, this mythos of there's these big companies, I think you kind of, and they don't touch on it really in the film, but I think people feel that it's okay to engage in illegal activities such as buying a model and resculpting it, or pirating stuff, or stealing imagery of things in intellectual property. That it's victimless, right? It's just like stealing a movie or music or whatever. And I'm not saying those are victimless, but I think people feel they are, and it kind of goes this way into gaming. But it actually impacts people because when you do that, they don't have the already slim profit margins dwindled to even less or nothing, so they can't sustain. And then all these companies that we like, they're really mom and pop shops, this cottage industry, and then they go. And then what happens?
Right. No, there's a ton to just unpack there. I'm going to start with the fact that you're talking about being environmentally friendly to an audience of people that basically collect plastic and lead. So I find that's a little humorous right there. But beyond that, it's definitely a story about the little guy. And to even underscore that further, when they get into talking about Games Workshop, and it's primarily Games Workshop, Warlord pops up in there in a little bit, and a few others, they all talk about their smaller roots. So where there's a large company now, there was once a mom and pop type outfit, and honestly, one of the things that I thought that was really cool was that sweet timeline that they cover.
Wasn't that beautiful?
That was really, really neat. And then, but this is where I'm going with it, is that when they get to the Games Workshop part, they talk about that in, I forget what year it was, but it was in the, I think, late 70s, right, where it starts to form up. And it's really just like this magical moment where the right people at the right time, at the right place, just happened to all fit together, and a thing happened. And that's really just magic. That's really cool when that sort of thing happens. And from there, it was like the birth of a whole hobby in some ways. And obviously the timeline existed before there, but that's the popular explosion at that point. But remember, they are mom and pop at that point. And now, 2018, on the cusp of 2019, we look at a giant and we're like, oh, we're so sick of the consumerism and all that. But they fought the fight to get there too,
I get a ding the film here. The first time I watched it, so when I watched the film several times, and I don't know how many times you've seen it, Alex, but like I watched it once just to kind of absorb it all. This is kind of my method. I used to, when I was in college, I reviewed films and movies for the school paper and did a lot of this. So I kind of established a method that I use. And so I just like to feel the film and just kind of go on the journey. And then I'll watch it one or more times where I kind of watch for different things. How is sound and music played with it? What kind of acting is there? How are they edited? What kind of mistakes might exist or things that just don't feel right, inaccuracies and so forth. They really dropped the ball here, though, with that timeline with Games Workshop. And the reason being is, and when I first watched this, I felt this was just like a huge shock because I thought, no, surely they're going to say this after, and they never do. Games Workshop was only able really to stay in business because at that time, it didn't create any of its own products. It was just a store, no different than going to any local game store that we would nowadays selling other people's properties. It really was able to keep going because they got in touch with a small company called TSR Games and Hobbies, and they were a retailer selling Dungeons and Dragons.
I think they do say that though.
No, they don't cover D&D at all.
Uh,
Not there, and I was shocked that they left that out because that was huge. That was one of the reasons why Games Workshop was able to keep going. And there's been books written about it of Dice and Men, and the Games Workshop founders actually have a new book coming out that they recently kickstarted. I wasn't able to be part of that, but all this other research material, they talk about this and about the importance of the relationship with TSR and D&D and how that kind of played into Games Workshop kind of moving forward and the influence, but also like the financial reward there. And then there was some conflict as well. And to leave that out, I was quite surprised by, because the person speaking at that point, Henry Hyde, he's very knowledgeable about the history of wargaming, which is why the director went to him and had him on. And I mean, Henry's spot on and everything, but the fact that they didn't include this bit, I was really shocked by.
So to that depth, they did not include it. I do believe that they did mention that they were just a store at that point.
They do
selling D&D and that sort of thing. So I mean, I give them half a ding for this.
I don't know.
They don't go into the depth of it the way that you're saying, but
no, but D&D is so, and I'm not really a role player at all, but the importance of D&D and Gary Gygax cannot be understated, not just to tabletop gaming in general, but to wargaming specifically, because TSR got its start, and D&D is born out of a set of wargaming rules, which is where Gary's love came from. Chainmail. He wanted to do historical wargaming, and like they left Gary out completely when they talk about American wargaming. And I know people think more of Gary of being involved with the role playing side, and obviously rightly so. But like just to leave out that this is really like an origin for both of these stories about the growth and the success or early success of Games Workshop, but then also of the whole wargaming field in America, I was really shocked by, and I was saddened actually to not see that there. And I was like, wow, I thought like surely they're gonna have, and they didn't. And I'm flabbergasted that it was left out. I really am. Like I made multiple notes. I'm like, really? No. And each time I went back to watch it, I thought, well, maybe I just got a bad file, or maybe like I closed my eyes, or I missed it. Or something.
You're I think you're having a very extreme reaction to that aspect of it, because I think
it's important though.
I think that they mention it and not clearly not in the depth that you need it mentioned.
No, but Gary's not mentioned. They don't mention TSR. They don't cover any of that.
When they talk about Games Workshop, they do mention that they basically had this idea to start to fill the miniature gap for the D&D that they have brought in.
I think on rewatch you're going to see they really don't cover much of anything with Gary,
and that's pretty much the limit of it. And you needed more, and I get that. So you could.
The story needed more.
The timeline, you mean?
No, the film itself, like, because that's an important part, because without Games Workshop, you lose a lot of origins for any of the other storylines. You lose origins for Chris and Macrocosm Games, because he got to start working for GW, and GW influenced just about every single other person in some degree who was part of the story. And then when they get to Warlord, a lot of those Warlord people are former GW people, the game designers and so forth. And maybe Games Workshop wouldn't be, maybe it would, I don't know. But without as its relationship with TSR and the importance of D&D in those early days. Who's to say what Games Workshop would or would not have been, and what its journey would have been like, and what these other games may or may not have been. I think it drastically shifts not only the literal timeline in the film, but also the metaphorical timeline of tabletop gaming.
Okay, I mean, you're entitled to that opinion. I don't know that it dings the film all that much. They are trying to get a lot in. They're trying to get a lot in in a limited amount of time.
True.
And what I'd be interested to know is if this stuff was covered and was consciously taken out, or if this was, because obviously, you take a lot of other footage, right? I mean, and I'm sure Henry Hyde probably had a lot more to say about all of it.
Oh, he can talk for hours. That's not a bad thing. I love it because you get him on. It's like an easy episode because you just throw him in. He's just like great. My suspicion is that they just didn't consciously cover it. Not
Interesting
they
to
were
know.
being malicious. It just they were like, well, in his Games Workshop, and they were just kind of following along with that. Not like, oh, we're gonna purposely leave that out. I think it was just kind of like it didn't even enter anyone's mind to be like, well, we should talk about TSR because I think people really do, and rightly so, associate TSR with D&D and role-playing games. And this is not about role-playing. It's not a D&D documentary. It's not a role-playing game documentary. So we're going to keep it the other way. And I think that's what they were doing. But I think it's a mistake that they didn't really highlight Gary Gygax and the importance of TSR to the early days, both of Games Workshop, as I said, but also to its influence on wargaming.
Yeah, maybe. I was just thinking back to how we were talking about the humanistic element of it. And I think that that helps make the movie appeal to a broader audience as well. I think that I could see my wife and I sitting down and watching this, and her being captivated at the very least by that part of it, and wanting to see how that story unfolds throughout the movie. Maybe not necessarily. I don't know. She'd be gripping to hear the next big wargaming bit of it, but I think they do a nice job of really capturing two people's stories, and I think that makes this movie appealing for anyone.
Yeah, I put this on with my wife as well because as a backer, I got the DVD of it, and I wanted to make sure that the DVD itself, played well, that there weren't issues with subtitles or all the tracks and audio and so forth, because you can get a different experience just listening to the streaming file on your computer or other device compared to actually watching it on your TV and so forth. And I mean, she has no interest in any of this really, but there's one point I believe Chris Nichols again. They have footage of him, and I go, "Oh, look, there's a baby!" And so she looks up, she's like, "A baby!" And she like kind of gets engaged for a little while with his son and daughter, and then she just kind of picked up a little bit on the story. So I agree that human interest kind of really drew her in. And like I said, she's not a gamer by any stretch of the imagination, but that kind of did get her. I get a question for you because I am very confused about where this stands. I made a note of something that I think is either a strength or just the phrasing I used was a gaping hole in the hull, and I'm not sure which it is. The strong emphasis on these human interest stories, on these people, I think it really felt to me that the film was more a film about people and their struggles than a film about miniature wargaming. And I felt that the issue and topic of miniature wargaming was basically incidental to it, that you could have removed it and it wouldn't have damaged the film significantly. Is that a strength or is that not a strength? And I honestly, I don't know. But it was something like I noted and I was like, this is a thing. And I've spoken with other people who felt the same, that like this was a real big thing there.
I don't disagree with the notion. It's clearly an artistic choice that was made, right? That's what they wanted to do. That's what they were going for. That's where the emphasis is. And I found it really interesting. Like, I didn't know what I was going to walk into because I didn't back this. I had really no information at all other than you said, hey, we're going to review this and I'm going to do it. Okay. So I was pleasantly surprised. you know, I think I would have been happy either way, because I'm just kind of just like that, I guess. But I don't. I think if you're going in and looking for something really hardcore, specifically about wargaming, you might walk out feeling a little unfulfilled. But if you're looking to really just get a sense of what wargaming is, and really dive into the stories of a few people, and I think one of the very big things that this is really all about is the wargaming community. I think it's less about wargaming as what is wargaming, or how this is how you move things, and you know, a tutorial on how to wargame, as it is a tip of the cap to the community itself, in a lot of ways, because you're looking at, you know, two people that they focus on for their ability to create, right, and you follow their stories, but then you see all kinds of contributors, from media contributors to writers, designers, sculptors. I mean, this is the hobby, right? These are all the people, and you see all these faces, and you know, that's really what captivated me. It was sort of like you open up a can of soup, and it was all your favorite things in there, and nothing was like over. You didn't have like too much chicken in the soup and not too much noodles in the soup. Just a nice balance of the soup. Yeah, yeah.
Did you have soup for dinner?
I didn't actually. I had.
Oh, but see, I did.
Did you really?
I did.
Well, you're having soup as well right now.
It's interesting. I agree with you. I think that I felt the way I did, and I had such a strong response to the film because of its focus on the human interest storylines. And I don't think I would have had that and would have felt the connection, because I felt a very strong connection to this film. I don't think I would have had that if it was different. But at the same point, I do think that when you have a film that's literally named Miniature Wargaming, the movie, which is, to me, is a little odd. It's Miniature Wargaming, the movie, not just Miniature Wargaming or the Miniature Wargaming documentary or whatever. But when you frame it that way, I think you set up expectations to a certain thing. And I agree that it's about, I think, the community and the people who are involved with this hobby. But to be like, it's a miniature wargaming documentary, I think that frames it slightly differently than what people get. But I do know some of the backstory, and I know that they did have to kind of shift gears during filming with some of the stuff, and so that some things didn't work out, and there were some things that they had planned, some stuff for Games Workshop they wanted to have more involvement with, and say archival footage and things like that, and they didn't get the rights to, and so there were some on the fly kind of transitions that they had to do,
Sure.
and so like I think that's something I'm keeping in mind, and also I mean this is Joe Piddington's first film he's directed, feature-length film he's directed, and like I can't be hard on the guy because one of my favorite films of all time is Clerks. And I think Clerks, as much as I enjoy it, is in many ways a far inferior film than this is. I like Clerks. It's the writing is brilliant, and that's really what carries it through. So many other things are like a subpar, and you just watch it like there's continuity errors and all sorts of other stuff, and you're just like whatever. But it was Kevin Smith's first film, and in many other ways, it's very artistically brilliant and so forth. And I think I have to cut Joe some slack here, and I think other people need to too. But I do think that some people just won't care, and I think some people will home in on that framework there. That like this is what it's called, and that you're getting something I think slightly different. And even knowing all the things I knew when I sat down and watched the film, I didn't know what I was getting into because like that opener. That was so different than anything I would have expected.
So the opener was definitely, and again, in the behind the scenes, they talk about that opener. They said they wanted to go for something different, which I thought was interesting because it was very different.
I don't think it worked,
and I didn't quite know what to think at first, but I don't know. I was into it. I mean, so it was an airsoft. They go and they play a game of airsoft, and it's sort of just like this military simulation. I have played some airsoft. I've never seen a game that looked tactical. It usually looks more to me like a bunch of 13-year-olds shooting a 40-year-old. and and there's no stalking of anyone. It's usually me going in, getting shot, and being like, I'm out.
I've done paintball, and that's how paintball is.
It's basically it too. So, but it looked cool, and I think that's what they were going for.
Oh, it was very dramatic.
They were trying to get a dramatic effect for the idea of these military reconnaissance strategy. So I think it worked in that sense.
See, I liked that they were doing this kind of very theatrical kind of opener, right? With that, because I mean, let's face it, unless you're really into miniature wargaming, it's kind of a boring topic, especially if you want to broaden the audience. But I felt by having that they were kind of playing up the whole military simulation thing and how wargaming can be used by militaries to do training. And I think the only other point in the film where that's kind of get talked about is when Henry Hyde's talking about the history, and he's talking about, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Yeah, Kriegsspiel with the Prussians. And then it stopped as if like this isn't used anymore. So I felt like that whole kind of thread wasn't developed as much. And I don't know if it was consciously abandoned or if it was an editing decision or running time or what it was. But I do have to say, although like I feel like that didn't work so much, it was really beautifully shot. It was nice to see.
Right on the my third bullet point in, I have drone camera shot.
Gorgeous, right? Cinematography,
It
not
was
just for that,
really
but the whole
cool.
film.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it's amazing. I was thinking about this too when I was watching it. This is in the first like maybe I don't know 15 minutes of the movies, if that. And I was just making quick notes about it, and I was like, it's amazing that we live in an age where like somebody can go and just buy a thing that flies and can film. And I'm assuming that it was a drone. I don't specifically know that. I assume it was a drone and they didn't charter a helicopter for the day or something like that.
No, because in the behind the scenes footage, I forget what they call that, but it's a phantom something drone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I mean, my safe assumption to make, but it's amazing that we live in an age where you can just do that sort of thing.
It's beautiful though, and I mean, he really did carry that throughout the film, and I think it's amazing because oftentimes, and this wasn't how it was supposed to be, but oftentimes it was just him doing the filming.
Yeah.
Filming the lighting, the sound and everything. Originally, there was supposed to be other people involved who were going to volunteer their time, and I don't quite know why that didn't work out as much as was originally intended. I mean, things change or whatever, but when you realize it really was just a one-man operation for most of it, and I mean, in post-production and all the things, other people kind of got brought in, but by and large, like it's just the director with his camera going. It's so indie, actually. He's going and he's setting up the shots, and like the lighting was great, the audio was really good. It was beautiful. Even those talking head moments, they were just really beautiful to see.
Mm-hmm. I thought it all looked really well. It all hung together very well. The animation that they used was really well done. I mean, this is not cheaply done at all. It looks really nice. The whole thing just hangs together very nicely.
The scoring I thought stood out for me too. Just how were the musical compositions and everything. It played really well. It was very cohesive.
So if I'm gonna, this isn't a ding, but I really do like the music. So it's kind of I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here a little bit. They have a lot of sad piano.
It's fitting though.
It's fitting, but I felt that might be a little over much. And that's my own personal taste. I'm not, I'm not hanging on my hat on a little too much piano or anything like that, but I'm just making my own critical poke at the thing.
I see, and maybe in this regard, it is too much with that. I kind of felt it was appropriate because, and this is something that for me kind of was weird with the film, right? So the film starts off where all the storylines are so full of hope and enthusiasm and vim and vigor. These wonderful things are going to happen, right? And then you get a moment where Chris from Macrocosm says, "Oh, we're going to do it our own because we're not going to do crowdfunding and we don't want to do a Kickstarter. Like that's the wrong way to do it." He doesn't say literally it's the wrong way, but like clearly he's saying like this is not the right way. Mm-hmm. And then like 2 seconds later, it's like snap, Kickstarter is the best thing ever. And then like things didn't work out. So like they get the challenges from this other company. They never say who it is, that you can't do the whatever. Then they end up at the UK Games Expo anyway, which is a board game thing, and they don't do as well with what they were supposed to do because they had to shift everything around. And it's a board gaming thing, it's not a mentoring thing. And then you swap over to the other storyline with Andy Bryant, with Salute, and how he's having some mental situations there, and that kind of basically falls apart on him, and all his other life situations fall apart. And then you switch to the other storylines, right, with Adam and Matthew, where they're all excited, right? In the beginning, they're working so hard on all these things, and like their day jobs are so mundane, and this is their release, and they're going to go to Norway, right, to Tabletop Battles, big tournament, and then they go and they're just like, oh, this is what we came for. And I just felt like the whole last portions of the film, you had this whole setup, and then it was just like everyone jumped off a cliff. It was just a huge downer for everything. There was no redeeming happiness to any of it. There was no real hope there. And sometimes life is like that, and I get it. But whereas so many storylines were that way, I felt like it didn't bode well. Like it kind of showed that things aren't great for the hobby. And I don't think that was the intention of the film, but it was just like every single thing was like, they're all so excited that everything's gonna be wonderful. And then bam, everything's terrible. And life is awful. And then you have the music, I think, underlying all that. And so like that's why I like
Maybe
the
I feel
music.
differently because I didn't feel that at all.
Really?
Yeah,
Because
like
like every single thing, like Andy, it says like how he's not with his girlfriend at the time, but she was still helping out, and he was living out of a car, and just like one thing after another, there was all these awful things that were going on.
yeah, no, and I get all that, and that stuff, but I felt like it wrapped up on a positive.
You think?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think
I
I was really like,
guess
oh,
you and I feel differently there. I don't
it's
know.
kind like I saw it, and I mean partly because I was so emotional about like the whole journey that they went on. The first time I watched it, I didn't really home in on it. But then the second time I was like, it's just like listening to an Alanis Morissette CD, like after, and I'm not advocating this. It's a poor taste joke, but there's that thing that people used to say in the '90s, like, don't listen to Alanis if you're feeling depressed, because next thing you know, you're gonna slit your wrists. And I'm not saying anyone should do that, and I'm not advocating. I can't say that enough. But like, it was just like it was such a depressing continuum at the end, and it just you felt how beat down everyone was, but I really felt like it needed some sort of ray of hope to say that maybe tomorrow will be a better day, as bad as this all was. And I felt like it didn't have that.
I don't know. See, I think you got that. I mean, I really do. And I get that, you know, there's decisions at the end that are made. I don't really want to get into spoiling anything, even though you kind of did.
Well, if they're listening to this, they should have watched it already. And if they didn't, it'll be coming out
Fair
in
enough.
release in
Fair enough.
2019. And
But I
it's a
think
documentary. It's not like, hey, guess what?
right.
There's
So
so
I
and
think
so's the
that,
killer.
you know, from Chris's point of view, it's fairly positive. I mean,
No, it's not.
he's willing to pick himself up and continue working and plugging through and figuring out the next move that he needs to make. I don't know. Like I don't see it as a negative. Like again, I look at this from a creator point of view, and if you want to create something, you can't just say, "Oh, this one didn't work out. I'm done." You know, of course you can if you want to, but you're not gonna continue through, right? That's the end of your thing. If you had turned around and said, "Hey, I'm done after 5 podcasts," because this just didn't work out the way I thought it was gonna, and I'm sure that you had points in time where that wasn't happening the way you wanted it to happen. You could have hung it up, but you just keep going, and then who knows? Maybe maybe there is that positivity hasn't happened yet, you know. But you got to keep going.
Yeah, but see, I don't think it had that. You got to keep going thing, because that could be hope, right? But with the whole Chris thing, I think he was playing up for the camera.
Well, I want to hear.
Like, I need to put a good PR spin on this because people are going to see it, and then what are they going to think later on? And I think he was really mindful of that with the situation. So that's why, like, he talks about, oh, we didn't do as well as expected. He didn't say we did bad or we did poorly, but clearly they did poorly, right? And it wasn't necessarily his fault. I'm not blaming him for that. but like that's a whole negative storyline going on right there with that shift. And he's like, oh, I guess we can try to do whatever and see what we can do, and maybe that'll work out. But that wasn't hope. That was just like, I don't know what's going on right now because I just got everything beat out. The good thing I guess with him was that because everything was so terrible at the event, he's able to go home and do bedtime with his kids, which I think is wonderful that he could think of that. Because for me, like as a dad, and I'm sure for you too, that's just delightful time.
It's a
As
big thing.
trying as it is, like I love it.
Mhm.
Sitting and doing the story times,
Well,
whatever.
I
But
I
like that,
know. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, just gonna say, but that's not a positive for his story as he
I didn't see it that way. I really didn't see it that way. It's funny that we could
and it's
come to
not
two
just him
very
though.
different conclusions.
Because like it goes with him and then it goes to Andy and that gets even more depressing. And then it just works down and like these guys save up all this money and they do the flights and they work out all this stuff and one of them buys the other one the special case and they talk about the foam cases and everything for carrying your troops and they go to another country and all the ordeal and like this is what it is. And I mean it was a huge letdown, one right after another,
Oh,
getting
really?
kicked into the teeth each and every time. And then I think it was meant to be hopeful, but like then it ends like the way the last scenes you see, they're not oh, the sun will come out tomorrow. They're not even well, maybe something good will come. They're just like, this is what it is. And then you're like, bam. And this is spoiling for people. And if you haven't seen it already, well, too bad on you. It's a Tony Soprano Fade to Black. And that's that.
I seriously, I did not get. I want to hear what other people have to say because I just didn't see it quite as harshly or as bleakly as you did. I mean, I'm not going to say that everything was like, everyone wins $1 million at the end, but it wasn't certainly the bleak picture that you're painting. I don't think.
I could be wrong. And again, because I have seen it several times, and each time with a more and more critical eye, it could be that I'm picking up on this kind of stuff. Whereas on a one or two watch, maybe you're not going to see if you're just kind of going for a more casual whatever. But like I
Fair enough.
really I homed in on that
All
on
right,
successive watches.
listeners, you got to be the judge on this one.
I fully admit I could be wrong. I don't think I'm completely wrong on here.
Much like the Sunday discussion, you are wrong.
I am so not wrong. I do have to say, I mean, I have a variety of critiques of the film, but most of them are really minor.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good watch. I mean, it's a good way to spend some time. I super duper enjoyed it. Sad pianos aside, I thought no. I mean, I thought it was really good. And like I said, I obviously didn't come to the same conclusion that you did with it. So I walked out kind of feeling pretty positive about the whole thing, feeling good. I really want to get my hands on some of those head monsters, those little head balls.
Oh, aren't they cool?
Yep. So somebody's got to hit me up on those, and
I don't think you can get them though.
They're not for sale.
So I did.
I need to have some head monsters.
I can't overstate how strongly connected I felt to this film and the people in the film. Right after watching it, after crying and crying and crying, I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and then I watched it the next day several times, or the day after. On the second day, I contacted several of the people being in the film, and I looked into some of the products that they were selling that they had talked about, and things are even worse afterwards for some of the stuff, and things are even better for some of the other stuff. But those headball monsters, I could not find. They were only on the Kickstarter.
So, and I remember when he did the Kickstarter because I actually
too.
it showed up on a few of my groups that I'm in and that sort of thing. And I'm not a big Kickstarter guy, though that is that I'm starting to move with the times a little bit on that.
I gotta say, when I first saw the Kickstarter, I looked, I was like, oh, look, it's a head monster ball. And I was like, what am I going to do with that? And I was very dismissive of it. I was like, okay, whatever. It's on a stick and that's that. But then like you see them in the film and they look really cool.
Yeah,
I don't know what I would do with them, but they looked really cool.
I see them and I think of all the wonderful D&D possibilities I can do with those. So I very much love them. I loved them then, but again, my just stubbornness on Kickstarter gates me with a lot of things, I think. But that is probably going to change eventually. I think it's now. I think Kickstarter is now. I'm like ancient. It's now stable enough that I feel comfortable investing my money in. Like I'm
You're so weird.
yeah, I know I'm weird. Like I'm some sort of like big mogul. Like my money matters. Like the $50 that I'll put into something. Like, well,
It's funny.
your money's your money, right?
No, it is. But you know what? You're right, because something you said earlier, it's about these creators, right? And they have some clear visions on what they want to do. Some of them work out, some don't. Uh, but I think they're all highly talented people.
Absolutely.
And just to put themselves out there is truly amazing.
Yeah, to me, so my underscore on the whole movie was, like you said, the creators and the community. And when it comes to being a creator in the community, it's not always going to work out. Not everybody is going to be able to make $1 million creating miniatures or making terrain or anything like that. But you're always blowing somebody away. You know what I mean? And it doesn't necessarily always equate to financial success, but when you show those pictures or you somebody sees the cool thing that you have on your table, I don't know. It makes an impression, and people talk about these things. And I know that's only worth so much, but that's what I think is a big part of this movie, is that you see these things and these things that people make, and even just some of the table shots that they show are just really, really impressive. And you remember why you like this and why you love doing it, why you're into it. And for me, it's always about the tables. Like I love just the way it looks. I could care less if it's science fiction, historical, fantasy. If the table looks amazing, I'm probably somewhere drooling over it, and you'll have to pull me off. But I don't know. That was a big theme for me in the movie that I really liked.
I think with this too, you have to keep in mind that success is relative and it shifts from person to person. So like you look at someone like Chris, right? And for him, I think would he love to be like a billionaire or whatever? Of course, I mean, most people would, right? But I think for him, the success is that he can continue to do this, pay the bills, put food on the table, and be
Yeah.
with his family. I think for Andy, the success is, does it help him to have some sort of income that comes in and also help him emotionally and mentally? And even like with the director, right? And I don't know if you caught the director cameo in the documentary, which was kind of interesting to see. But with the director, right? I don't know that he's made a profit off of this yet. And I know people would say like most movies don't make a profit because of the account or whatever. But like I don't think he's made a profit. I think he's hoping when it goes into general release he will. But even right now, I would say it's a success for him because like I haven't made a movie. Have you made a movie?
No, I haven't made any movies.
It's a feature-length film. He's traveled all over the world, interviewed tons of amazing people. People like most of us who are into the hobby would just like dream about getting 5 minutes to chat with, right? He's done this. He's worked with these amazing people. He's had this huge accomplishment. He's in IMDb, and I think the film's very successful in many levels, and most people will never be able to accomplish that.
You've literally just disproved your statements about things ending on a sour note.
No, but see, this is all outside of the film. This is not within the documentary itself, because you have to deal with both what's actually happening within the frame and what's happening in the greater world outside of it. And those two things, I think, are different.
They're different, but a lot of that stuff is. Anyways, I feel it's resolved.
And yet you're wrong, but that's okay.
Okay, all right. We'll keep going.
I had some technical issues actually with the film itself, and I think one of them is just kind of a general thing that people experience with how a lot of people in the industry handle things. And I'm going to say attributed to that because I had it in one way watching the movie and not the other. There were some points with the narration, the audio, especially when there's music playing, you can't hear them speak. It's so soft, and that was on my TV. And I think it's the way that they're layered or whatever. Because you ever notice like you're watching TV, right? And one thing's really soft, and the next thing's really loud, and then like it doesn't equalize out, and I don't know about you, but like people like, why can't that happen?
That's
I
on
think
the
that
DVD or on the stream?
it was on the DVD, and I think it's something to do with. I think it had to deal with the surround sound 5.1 or whatever. So like if you don't have that or whatever, it kind of does it kind of oddly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the stream, so I couldn't compare.
Yeah, like on the stream, I had no issues with that,
It seemed
and I know other people did have issues with this,
yeah.
and I think that's kind of what it is. Uh, I was also with the opener, and this could have just been an aesthetic kind of point, and this is very stupid and nitpicky, but I'm going to mention it anyway because when you're reviewing, I feel you have to. Uh, the font used for the title, I thought it was kinda hard to read, like, at first, like, it showed up and I thought, "Oh, is this an error in the encoding or something?" Because especially in what is it? In the W, it's whatever the font was used, there was, like, all these chunks taken out of it, and I didn't know, like, if it wasn't rendering properly, and there was actually another part later on where they had some video footage, I think for one of the sci-fi games, I think that's Gates of Antares, and they had something overlaying on it. It almost looked to me kinda like when you have, like, a scrambled TV channel.
Yeah.
It
So at first I didn't know what you were talking about, but then when you talked about the overlay and how it looked a little like a broken image a little bit,
yeah.
I do know what you're talking about. And that's it's a niggling little point, right? It's definitely a very small thing. But I totally, now that you said it, I remember it, and I remember sort of saying, "Oh, that's that is a little jarring at that point." But you know, you move on.
I mean, again, I completely agree. It's a minor thing, but at the same point, those minor things seem like they should also be like the easy things to deal with. Like if they're minor, then just fix it, right? It's not this huge overarching thing where you have to recut the movie, which he did. I believe
Well,
he actually had to do. He had
I,
to recut it and refilm and do.
sometimes I wonder with things like that if they just liked it. You don't like it that much, obviously, because you're bringing it up as a thing. I had noticed it, but that might have just been something that they consciously said, "Hey, that's the look we want to go for." I don't know. I mean,
No, it could be. And for me, it's not that it's an artistic problem. I think it's a utilitarian problem.
maybe yeah. I mean, but it's not a broken image or anything like that.
No,
It
not
is
completely, but
a conscious
I
choice
think
that
you
they
get
said.
into an accessibility issue.
Yeah, but this was a conscious choice. They said this is what we want it to look like, and whether or not we find that hard to read or hard to view, now that's a different conversation.
Mm, could be.
I don't know. That's the way I see it. Like 'cause you're talking about art, right? So I mean, I'm always very reluctant to say, oh, well, if they chose to do that, then I think they were right in doing it because that's what they wanted. And whether or not I like it or whether or not I find that difficult to see is a second half of the conversation.
So this actually, I think, raises I think a larger point question and topic. Is this a documentary or is this a non-documentary film? Because if it's a documentary, it's less art and more fact. And that whole artistic temperament, artistic point of view,
Oh
I
no,
think takes a back seat to a lot of it. Whereas if it's more just film, right? And I'm not
no,
arguing for one over the other, but if it's more just film, I think you get more leeway with your poetic license.
no, I don't agree. You can be documentaries can be artistic. They can be straight. I mean, the style in which they choose to do it is the art choice, right? You can shoot things in any number of ways. It's like, if you're filming a document, I do not know anything about filming, but I imagine, the shots that they choose to put in there, right? The camera angles, those are all artistic decisions that they're making. You can't say that that's like it's fact driven. I mean, the content has to be fact driven for something. But again, when we're talking about like images or something like that, there's artistic choice that's happening.
Let's put it into another medium where it probably doesn't translate incredibly well, the written word. So if you have something factual and it's a biography, right? That has to be that's not artistic really. As soon as you start going more to the artistic side, it's no longer biography or autobiography, it's a memoir. So you do have that poetic license there. You have that artistic temperament that you can do where you can do whatever with the shots or whatever. But if it's more documentary, more biography and so forth, you don't have that as much.
I see what you're saying. Somehow I don't.
And I'm not advocating for one or the other.
I kind of don't view it the same way, I guess. I don't know that it translates in my mind, but I see where you're going with it. So I'll play along, and I'll say that I do feel that this is in the vein of documentary. I think that it, but it's a fine line. It's somewhere between a documentary and some sort of like human biopic sort of thing. So I don't know, straddles both, a little bit of both.
I'm not advocating for one over the other. I would almost, and I don't even know if this is a thing. It's probably not a thing. I would almost say it's a soft biography, a soft documentary.
Spoke it into existence.
Where, like, I think if you're looking at a hardcore documentary, this is one of the hard
documentary versus a soft documentary.
Yeah, where it's really, let's say you're looking at a documentary of, I don't know, Statue of Liberty.
Like you want like Ken Burns versus,
Exactly.
I know where you're going.
With Ken Burns, what you get interesting though with him, talk about artistic. So Ken Burns has a very clear artistic style, right? To how he does things. So much so that, and I only know this because I do very rudimentary video editing, that if you use the Apple iMovie Suite video editing software, they actually have a whole system in there for editing and how your stuff translates, your camera movement goes, and it's called Ken Burns, literally called Ken Burns, and it's like the camera starts like say in one spot, and then you can choose wherever it wants to go, but then it'll end in another spot, so you can actually zoom in or whatever, and that's very Ken Burnsian.
So kind of said that he's a soft documentary.
Could be
because art.
Well, think about Ken Burns, right? The Civil War, for example, I think is an amazing documentary series. It's truly brilliant what he did with that. But again, that's another, it's human interest to human interest to human interest. It's not, I mean, it's factual, of course, it has to be, but it doesn't focus solely on that or even predominantly on that. But I think if you're looking at something, I'm going to use Statue of Liberty again, right? You're doing I'm going to say hardcore documentary on the Statue of Liberty. I don't think you're going to get so involved. You might not even mention anything about the cultural sentiment about it, the human interest in that, or the artistic involvement in creating it and the design of it. I think you would be very bland, I'm going to say, in no judgment there either, but very blandly being like, this is what happened and this is why it happened and so forth. And you move through that where it'd be very textbooky, for lack of a better phrase. And I think like a Ken Burnsian documentary series, or this, I think this, you could argue, is more in a Ken Burns kind of ethos of how to handle it. I think it's more of a softer,
I take that as a compliment,
where you have facts, but that you're focusing more on other aspects of it.
So where I draw my documentary line is if you have a guy talking about ancient aliens with really big hair and conspiracy theories, you're on the soft documentary side of things.
So this should be on the History Channel, is what you're saying?
This
I could see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I hope they do really well with this. I liked it a lot.
I think they will. I actually think it'll. Do I think it's going to be like, I don't know, crazy rich Asians or anything like that? No. But again, it doesn't have the same budget or anything. I think it'll do pretty decently well in general release. I hope it does anyway.
Hope so.
If you would give it a rating out of 5 stars, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, what would you rate it?
I don't like doing that.
Well, that's why I make you do it.
So I enjoyed it thoroughly. I don't know what that translates into stars. I'll give it a solid 4 out of 5.
Death Stars or Ewoks or army figures, or I don't know.
Yes, so stars. Yes,
dice.
Definitely 4 out of 5 Death Stars.
Okay.
4 out of 5 Paul Stanleys.
Whatever you want to use.
You know what I'm saying when Paul Stanley? He's the lead singer of Kiss. I have to explain this for you, don't I? He's got the star on the makeup.
I know he's Star Child or whatever.
Okay, I didn't know if you knew.
I mean, I know I'm young, but I'm not that young.
You're younger than I am.
Who isn't?
Well, Adrian.
Oh.
He's not even here to defend himself.
And he doesn't listen to podcasts, as we all know, so he's never going to find this out.
Oh, that's good.
Don't anyone tell him.
I really liked it. It was 4 out of 5. I would recommend it, and I do think that it is the sort of thing that you can take a non-wargaming significant other to, or anyone, and watch it. I don't know that it's good for, as a dad. I don't know that I'd be showing it to my 9-year-old, because I do think some parts are a little emotional, but I don't think it's a bad thing either. It's just my own personal parenting choices. I wouldn't show that to a 9-year-old.
All the PTSD stuff.
That's what I mean. Yeah, there would be a lot of questions I'd have to answer that I'd like to not have to answer right now.
Come back in 5 years and I'll tell you. No.
Yeah. But it's not like it's not bad language or anything like that.
No, I was just trying to think how often they swear, and I don't think they do.
No, it's family friendly. You just have to handle some mature content.
And by mature, I mean the violence is bad, and
there's
models blowing each other up.
There's a lot of model death.
Yeah. I wonder what the MPAA rating is for that.
Yeah.
Simulated death, simulated violence.
SMD, simulated model death.
I mean, I don't know. I got to look it up. I don't know what. I mean, I don't think he submitted it for that, but I don't know what kind of rating it got, or self-rating. I think it's just unrated. It has. It has to be unrated, right?
I don't know. I have no idea how that works.
I will say on IMDb it has 7.5 out of 10 stars.
Well, I gave 4 out of 5. That's basically the same thing.
Sure,
I'm as good as IMDb. Everyone.
Cool.
Yeah. Just if you need to know anything about a movie, feel free to send me an email, and I will give it some sort of a star rating. And then you'll know everything. You don't even need to go on the internet anymore, except to send me that email. But don't type in IMDb. Just send me the email, and then you get how it works.
That's funny. That's very funny.
This is why I'm only allowed on 2 times a year.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
It's when they let me out of my cage.
Back in you go.
Yep.
Wait till next year.
Yep.
Funny. So it sounds like you did thoroughly enjoy it. I wasn't honestly sure what you were going to think about it.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. Why would you? It was great. It was fun. I mean, not the kind of fun apparently that you thought it was.
You make it sound like I hated the movie. I didn't hate it.
Oh no, you're just a cranky old person.
Well, I think everyone would agree that I really am a crotchety old man.
Yes. Yeah.
And all those kids need to get off my lawn right now.
Yep. Yeah.
You're definitely more enthusiastic than I thought you would be.
What did you expect from me? I don't know.
Well, because you're meh. And I was expecting you to be like, yeah, I guess it's fine.
That wouldn't have made a very good podcast.
No, but then like me picking on you about it would be, well, for me, it would be very humorous.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay.
And I don't know. I was just expecting to be like, oh, because like wargaming is not really your thing either.
Yeah. I don't know why you have me on.
That's a question I ask myself every time after. And then I get the emails and I go, oh, that's why. So
yeah.
Other people like when he's on.
Well, I do want an Ancients army.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I said I wanted one.
I'll believe that when I see it.
That doesn't manifest itself. Want doesn't necessarily manifest itself.
No, but you could be lying. What do I know?
About my wants?
Yes. You could be projecting.
Yeah. So, not to change subjects on you, but I've been talking about Rangers of Shadow Deep a whole bunch. Have you listened to anything that I've said about it?
I've heard you say the name Rangers of Shadow Deep.
Yeah, so it's the new game that the guy who made Frostgrave he put out.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now it rings a bell.
Yeah, you really don't listen when I talk.
Well, to me, you are the teacher in a Charlie Brown cartoon.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but it's a cooperative fantasy game. Basically, kind of apes out. I think a little bit off. I don't have the rules yet, but it apes a little bit off of Frostgrave itself. 20 die rolling sort of thing with the same way. And I think pretty much the stats are pretty much the same. but it's cooperative, which I thought was really cool. And I think that's always something I like. So you each play a ranger, and you're fending off whatever evils are coming through the Shadow Deep, apparently. But it's also interesting too, because from what I understand, it seems to be progressively scenario based. So the book itself has scenarios that take you through a story.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So I'm saying all this without having the rules in my hands, so I'm not quite sure I know everything about it yet. And I don't know, I think I'd be more interested in, can I set up my own game and play, which I'm assuming the answer is yes. Or do I have to follow the progression of the scenarios? I imagine you can just play whatever you want. But yeah, it seems like that he's taking the scenarios, telling a story, and then plans to do expansion stories that, again, follow through scenarios.
Is Osprey putting this out too?
I don't know.
I
don't know. I've done no research on it other than it came up in my feed, and I was immediately like, "Ooh, what's this?" Click, and then I read about it. It's on Drive Through RPG, I believe.
Yeah, on sale for $20.
Yeah. So kind of neat. Also, I believe it's a pretty low miniature count, which also is a good thing, because it seems like you need, a ranger. If you're playing by yourself, he has a few followers, from what I understand. So you paint up like maybe 4 or 5 miniatures total, then whatever he's fighting. But if you're playing cooperatively, it sounds like you each have a ranger, and you kind of go at it. Which, again, that would be my appeal.
That is very interesting. Yeah, you do love the, like, why can't we all get along kind of games.
I love cooperative games. This is why I would never, ever be a tournament player, pretty much with anything.
I mean, I gotta agree. I'm not really a tourney kind of guy.
So I don't. This is off topic, but when I played Warcraft heavily, I was an arena player, which is the opposite of cooperative. And I wasn't like the world's best arena player or anything like that, but I was pretty good. I actually had a pretty good rating.
That sounds like a humble brag right there.
No,
I wasn't really, but
I say this just to get to my next point. When I would lose, because I would be on the cusp of like kind of good to meh. When I would lose, I'd be in a very, very foul mood, and my wife would be very angry about my commitment to the game. So competitive things, like I can play friendly competitive very lightly, but I way prefer cooperative games. And even like that's one of the reasons why I like was it 1775?
Oh, that is such a great game.
Cooperative but competitive. I'd rather play with someone, and that to me is just more fun.
Major props to Academy Games for creating that.
Yeah, it's a great game.
I love that game. I'm just thinking, like, why didn't I put that on the holiday gift guide again this year?
Because you do it every year.
I do it every year, basically, but it's such a good game. It's really just such a good game.
So for my my $20 or less, Rangers of Shadow Deep. Is that a category still?
It is, but like we don't know what the hardcover is going to be at, or maybe they're going to do like a bundle deal with some.
So again, I'm on the Facebook page, and it's in my feed, so I read. It didn't sound like they were doing a hardcover.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if they're only doing drive-through RPG for the digital, that means Osprey won't be involved at all.
Okay, then I get maybe that's the answer then.
But then that's interesting though too, because if you don't have a larger publisher involved and you're not doing that other kind of whole system, what do they expect people going to be using for figures? Is it going to be print and play stuff, or do they just think you're going to go buy?
It's anything. I mean, it's anything. I mean, he says you can use the Frostgrave stuff. The Facebook group has. I'm trying to find the number of people in it.
More than one.
It's got a couple thousand at this point.
Hey, there you go. That's not bad at all.
No, I can't find. I'm on Facebook, kind of scrolling around, but I can't find where it is. But yeah, no, I mean, seems to be in terms of fantasy wargaming, which is at least the time that I'm zeroed in on a little bit. That's the new hot cakes.
I'm glad you found out about it because I had never heard about it until you said anything.
Yeah, well, I said it 3 times, and now you've finally heard it on the 4th one.
They do say, actually, you have to repeat yourself at least 3 times for people to remember things, which is one of the reasons why when we air sponsor messages that we like to make sure that we air them repeatedly to say that people should make sure that they go to the Maine Historical Wargaming Association up at Huzzah, May 17th to the 19th, 2019 at the South Portland, actually, Doubletree Inn, or over to Enfilade on May 24th to the 26th, 2019 at the Red Lion Inn in Olympia, Washington. Because if we say that, and we said it earlier, and we say it again, people will be like, maybe I'll go to Enfilade because I hear it's at the Red Lion Inn in Olympia, Washington this year. That sounds like, actually, it's there every year, to be honest. But I think that might be a rollicking good time. And if we only say it 2 times, they're like, what did they say? I don't know. We'll forget it. We won't go there. We won't go to Portland, although going to Portland would be beautiful. Important to do these things.
Are you going to sing-song it?
Are you going to sing-song it?
Nope.
Have you been hitting the Malibu Bay Breeze?
Huzzah!
That is just... I can't believe that's what you think of every time. That's really
every time.
I feel like the show just has so much meme potential, and no one's done anything with it.
Well, I don't know how to make a meme, so
I'm probably lucky for that.
Yeah. So listeners on the Facebook page, if you could create as many memes as you can, not of me though, only of John.
Oh God.
So
I'm thinking back to that time Adrian said to me that he thought I was too cheesy on the closing. And I was like, okay, fine. So then I did it just not. And like there were complaints by like, what did I do? And why did I do that? And I remember him saying, oh, that was awful. Why'd you do that? And I'm like, because you jerk, you told me to.
It reminds me of, did you ever see the Howard Stern movie?
I can't say, Private Parts?
Yes.
I can't say I have.
Oh, okay. There's a scene in it where they get acquired by, I think it was like NBC, and they wanted him to say the tagline. You have to say your call letters, right? When you're on the radio. Mm-hmm. And it had to be said WNBC. And there was just a big scene where he was very angry about that and he wouldn't do it. And then he started doing it. And of course was like way overemphasizing it and being super dramatic. But it's pretty funny.
That sounds pretty funny.
Anyway, so I'm getting back to the Rangers of Shadowdeep for 1 second. I think that's a game that you and I would probably have fun playing.
I think that's a game that you should buy, learn how to play, teach me, and then we can play.
Yeah, you're probably right. We could use your nifty Dwarven Forge stuff.
We could, and I could send you my Drive-Thru RPG affiliate link to use, which then benefits the show because it doesn't cost you any extra, but Drive-Thru RPG sends a little bit of money our way to say thanks for the sale.
Nice. You hear that, everyone?
Because we're just pimping everything today.
Even you can do that.
That was just so condescending. Even you pitiful people, can also use this.
There's going to be some serious editing in this episode, I think.
Oh, poor Joshua. The guy has a rough time of it. I mean, his hearing's not so great anymore.
Why?
Well, he had that illness, and he's recovered-ish. He's been okay for duty, according to his doctor, but he worries his hearing's not the same. So he's just going to be like, what did they say?
I'm sure he loves you talking.
You got to make him work hard. In last episode you were on, he had to work like 5 times as hard.
Yeah, that was... Oof.
Yeah, that was.
That was rough audio.
Oh, man, I felt so bad sending that to him. I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is probably the worst I've ever sent you.
Hey, you paid for it, man. You had to pay for that one.
But I'm like, the contents are really good once you get past.
Yeah, that was... Oof. He did an amazing job with that.
I was going to say, it just goes to show how talented he is.
Oh, because that was... If you listened to the Dungeon World episode at all... It's because of him. Like literally, if you could hear English, it was because of him. Otherwise, it was in some sort of internet crackly language that would not be understood by human ears whatsoever.
I will say, if anyone's interested in having anyone do audio editing for them, such as for a podcast, he actually does do it. Hobby Desk Podcast Editing. You can find them on Facebook, and his rates are really good. His work is amazing. His turnaround's pretty fast. So I highly recommend. I give him 2 thumbs up. And I've been using him, geez, past 2, 3, 4 years, maybe 3, 4 years, something like that. And just thoroughly impressed. So anytime anyone thought I sounded halfway decent, it's because he's done amazing work.
He is a wizard.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Not doubting that. He's quite a talented individual. Good stuff, though. I happen to have heard, speaking of rumors and podcasts, that you are working on a podcast.
False.
So I've just been around too much modeling materials.
True, it is true. I kid. Yeah, so it's a sword and sorcery podcast. We're kind of talking about sword and sorcery as a genre, what's going on with it. It's myself, 2 other guys, Matt and Logan. They are fantastic. And the podcast is called Rogues in the House, which is a Conan title. If you don't recognize that, so you can check it out. We have our first episode hopefully dropping, if iTunes will give us the green light. Hopefully dropping on like Tuesday of what's today's date? The 14th. So it's Tuesday. I don't know. Let me look at a calendar, I guess. Tuesday the 20th. And yeah, if you want to hear more of me looking on calendars, please check out that portion of that podcast. But no, actually, we did record it. I thought it came out pretty cool. It was kind of neat to do. We're hoping to do one some sort of on like a once a month cadence. So it should be pretty good.
Who does your editing?
I actually did my editing.
Just think how much time you could save by having someone like Joshua do your editing.
It's true. And I might look into it in the future. I definitely gotta get my handle on the whole concept of this thing, because it's sort of I think we recorded it on like Sunday, and then we said, oh, we don't have any of the podcast stuff set up. How do we do that? So I quickly started I edited it, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I got Audacity and just started like moving things around. I was like, okay, well, this doesn't sound too bad, I guess. And then I didn't have any of the technology stuff done for the podcast, so I'm calling John asking, how do I do this? What do I set up? What do I have to do? So he pointed me in the direction. Thank you, I appreciate it. Most of it was like, oh, I can have you talk to a guy. He can help you.
I'm like the last person to talk to, because so this is going to sound like I'm humble bragging like you were doing earlier, but I've been doing this for so long that I've set this up such a long time ago. Things are very different now, and I just never learned the new ways of doing any of it, because I'm like, this is how I've done it, and it works, and that's that. Like, I wouldn't know what to do. I really would just be so clueless.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully I set everything up. I'm waiting for the iTunes thing. So if it didn't set up correctly, I guess I won't know. And hopefully they'll tell me. But anyways, you could check it out. It's Rogues in the House. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you take a listen.
How could people take a listen? It'll just show up in iTunes for them?
In theory, yes. Otherwise, we're on the app that we're using is called Anchor FM. So you should be able to go to Anchor FM / Rogues in the House, and hopefully that will bring you to what you need. But I'll tell you what, if people are interested, and if John will let me, I'll post a link on Wargaming Recon, if that's cool.
Sure.
All right, then I shall do that.
I will give you the best advice I've ever given anyone ever.
Don't do a podcast.
Well, I mean, there's that too, because next thing you know, you're doing it for like 12 years now. And what do? You can't just stop after 12 years because you got to keep going. No, the best advice is don't be afraid to outsource things.
No, it's true. I mean,
Pay
and
people for stuff that you don't like to do, or that you don't know how to do, or that's too hard to do, or that's inconvenient, or just because, and do the stuff that you like and the stuff that makes you happy. And there's someone out there who will be talented and willing and able to do the other things as long as you pay them appropriately.
it's the community thing, right? We'll tie it back to that.
Sure.
It's all the creators in the community. Now it's the podcast community we're talking about.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it. It's kind of new and different for me. Yeah, I don't know. I hope it gets some listenership.
From doing your inaugural podcast, did you find any correlations or an affinity towards the documentary and the artistic vision and what may have gone into that, or some aspects of, like, say, the sound or any of that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, so when it comes to the sound, I've in a former life was a musician of sorts. So I have some audio editing, like certainly not like professional level, but I can move some waves around and kind of manipulate things and fade things in and out. That's about it. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about feeling any, creative affinity or anything like that. I'm mostly just excited about sitting and talking. I think that's kind of fun. As you notice, I think the average length of the podcast here when I'm on goes up quite a bit. I think usually when I'm on, we run like an hour and a half or so because I just keep going.
Though, you don't hold any records, oddly enough.
Oh, well, I didn't know there was one. So
I think the longest episode I've ever done was 3 hours ish. And I believe that was one of the times I had Henry Hyde on.
The night is still young, my friend.
It is, but Henry's not on the episode. I mean, they're 5 hours ahead of us.
Fair enough.
Or 6. No, 6. Might be 6. I always get confused with the whole daylight savings thing.
Give him a call. Special guest.
He might be on Twitter. I don't know. He's prolific there.
Is he really?
He is.
That's funny. That's cool.
He's tweeting up a storm. Lately, it's about one or more of his cats.
Oh, so it's like a personal social.
Well,
as
it's a variety of things. Henry's really interesting for many reasons, and I'm a huge fanboy of his, and I'm not ashamed to say that because I love everything the man does, and the fact that he's in the documentary just makes me love it even more. So this is dumb because I love the animation that they did, but part of me was like, Henry's talking, they should show his face. And like they did show his face, but I was like, he's still talking. They should show his face some more.
You're impossible.
So we can see, because like, I mean, Henry's such a great guy. You want to see him, but then also like you get to see his workspace there, right? So you can see all the stuff behind the books he's done and the other things he's worked on. And
I was actually keenly interested in that aspect, and I'm not joking about that. I was like, I wonder what it looks like where he works.
Well, see, it's interesting because that's one of the things as a podcaster I home in on, because of any video stuff. People usually have bookcases behind them, right? For whatever reason, because I don't know, we're weird. And I'll always be like, and I zoom in and I look to try to figure out what titles they have. And have I heard of them? Have I read them or whatever? So Henry has this amazing collection of stuff, partly because he has a varied creative life. So he's into art. He's done watercolors. He used to be an insurance person, but he's done like his own ad designs. He did the layout for his own book. He does photography. He, of course, does rules design. He does graphic design, just all this kind of stuff. And he's wonderful with like all of it, writing, and you name it. So he has this myriad collection of things around him. And I wanted more screen time so I could see what he had around him. Because I mean, I'm not the only one, right? Other people were going to be doing that too, and be like, "Oh, what does he have?" And then maybe someone would get a tidbit, so they could be like, "Whoa, Henry's a graphic designer, and he's game designer, he's done all these things. So maybe there'll be like a tidbit there that can help like get someone else into it and be like, oh, maybe I should look at that, and maybe that'll set me on the path to being a game designer or whatever. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you emulate, right?
People pick up on the most interesting things.
Yep.
And I used to have, I've since moved it because we're redoing the studio and so forth, but I moved my bookcase down in it. So I used to have behind me, I learned people started to look to see what was behind me. So then I would like face out different books. Henry's book is one that I've often faced out, or I'd have little other trinkets and things. So I have this little
your picture that you put out, right? That got a lot of comments on all the books people were pointing out. And
yeah, but like I used to have like a little pig in this silver 3D model of something, and people one time someone was like, "So what are those things?" And so I had to explain how the special, for lack of a better word, trophies, the special awards from. And I'm not allowed to talk about this very much, so it's hard to bring it up. But from a special industry event at a convention that I go to, and there's like this secret theme that the industry people do for the event, and how it gets played into all their own events, and then like these prizes are given out, and so like I put them up, and I never really thought anyone was going to pick up on the fact that I have this little pink pig here, this flying. What's the other thing? It's a Vampiric Sloth, I think, is another thing I have floating around. And just really odd.
I don't know where you order a Vampiric Sloth.
One's a silver flying platypus, and it's, I don't know. I think there was one year there was a goat. I think I missed out on the screaming goat thing. And I don't know, just unusual things. And so they just kind of appear and see what kind of Easter eggs people can pick up on that you don't get just from listening to the show, which is why you got to watch the video feeds too.
Yes, you definitely have to. Oh, you know what? That's funny. I was just looking at something. Apparently, my podcast is now on Spotify.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yes, you can hear us on Spotify.
It took me a long time to get into Spotify.
Yeah, well, you know what? Got to know the right people, I guess.
Apparently so.
Yeah. I don't.
I'm sure they appreciated the tenor that you gave them.
Yeah, it was a high 5 tenor. 2 high fives.
Funny.
Not really, but I try.
So do you think you'll see the film again when it comes out into general release?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about it, and I think I'd like to take my wife, have her sit down and watch that.
I know it's finishing up the film festival circuit, and then it's doing the general release. And I don't know like how they're going to choose theaters or how that's going to work, or if they're just going to do it where you can get it, you buy it or rent it, I guess, or both, streaming, or if they're going to do more physical media, because they did DVDs and they did Blu-rays.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they'll have more of that you can get, or if they're just how they're going to do it. It's a tough question to deal with distribution.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how you start to try to answer that. I wouldn't know a thing about that. I hope they get in as many cool theaters as they can. I know that there's definitely locally there's some cool smaller ones, which I imagine would be the sort of thing that they target, like something like the, I'm trying to remember if like the Somerville one is still around. But it'd be really cool. It'd be really fun to go and take my wife to that and have a little date night out of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
It might not be the kind of date night you'd like, because something tells me, I think she'd enjoy portions of the film, but I think she'd be like, oh, look, they're painting things. Can we get more of the human interest?
I don't know. Don't underestimate her.
No,
she's fantastic.
I'm not doubting that. It's just I have a hard time picturing many people who don't have any even like a modicum of interest in this kind of topic being like, let's go see that, as opposed to something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you go to see something for somebody if it's important to them.
That's true. I'm trying to think what the last film was that I did that with.
This might be a good one to do it with.
And I think it Maybe when I went and saw Jurassic World, I think she really wanted to see that, and so I went and saw that. Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, well, this is your turn to. You can play that card.
See, that's when we go see Star Wars. Although I become disillusioned with them, so
You really shouldn't have to play a card to go see Star Wars.
well, she's not a Star Wars person. We go because they always come out around my birthday, so we go see Star Wars. Although we didn't see Solo.
Yeah, they do. They do. They fall out on my daughter's birthday, which is very, very, very close to your birthday.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
interesting how that works.
Late December, everyone.
There we go. Be mindful. And actually, speaking of December, I should let people know that we are winding down our season here. So we have 2 more episodes, I believe, coming out, 2 new, fresh ones, and then we'll do some best of. But as we're talking about births and everything, I am, of course, expecting soon and in anticipation of the birth of my next child. And when that happens, I will be disappearing for a while and coming back. So if the baby comes early, the season might be cut short in so forth. But I'm anticipating to take a longer break than usual. Usually we cut half of December off and half of January. So we get a month break and say, there we go. And then we come back fresh and so forth. It'll be a longer period than that. But with these things, they happen when they happen. And so I can't really plan for it, which drives me a little crazy because I like to plan for everything.
If
But
you guys want during the break, I can come on and say things like "Huzzah!" if it just helps.
Oh man, I'm just thinking of so many funny things that could be done with that. And I'm thankful that I have recording of you doing this right
Yeah, of
now.
course. I mean, I'm just the big clown, so
It's just so good.
I'm happy to lend my voice to silly things like that.
Do you have the water squirting flower and everything too?
I'm not that kind of clown.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
Good stuff. So we get all that cool stuff going on. And we've talked a lot about advertisers and about sponsors and financial backers and so forth. But I got to say also, the film had its Kickstarter backers, for example, right? And we have our sponsors, but we also have listeners like you. So we have many of you who have taken the time to be part of our Patreon community and support the show that way. And I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone who does that and say that you too can be part of that community by heading on over to wargamingrecon.com/Patreon. And you can do that for as little as $1 a month. That's less than a cup of coffee. And you can get access to all sorts of cool stuff, including getting episodes before they release to everyone else, which is kind of snazzy. You can say, I got mine first, which was kind of nice because, like, as a Kickstarter backer, I can say, I got my Miniature Wargaming, the documentary movie before anyone else. Unless you also Kickstarted it. So then you would get it then too. But otherwise, what? It's before general release.
Did well there.
Hey, well, really, I mean, how many of you were backers? I'd love to know. I know some of you are. Probably because we talked about it on the show, and some of you are not. But like in the scheme of things, of people who could be going to see this movie and people who backed it, the numbers are you're gonna get some disparity there.
Mhm.
I would
Sure.
say some vast disparity.
Yeah. I mean, I hope there's a lot of people who didn't back it that go see it.
I think you should lead the charge, go see it, buy tickets to it, and then make sure you buy copies of it. But you should buy a copy for every person you know who plays games and give it to them.
That's a good idea. It's a good Christmas gift.
I don't quite know what the price point is, but you should do that.
Is it available for purchase in time for the holidays?
Sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I think at the right price, the director would say, sure. I don't quite know.
Right price, anything's available.
You should hop on Twitter and send a tweet to at Mini War. I think is it just at Mini War, and they'll get in touch with you. I got to look up their Twitter handle now because I tweet them all the time, and oddly enough, I don't quite know. At Mini War the movie. There you go. That makes sense.
All right. So I'd have to get on Twitter for that, but that's a whole other topic.
They're on all the things. Like we are on all the things. Wargaming Recon. Find us everywhere. Especially where quality podcasts can be found. Stitcher, you mentioned Spotify, we're there too. We're on Pocket Casts, iTunes, we're everywhere. We're in all the things.
Nice.
We're in your dreams. I don't know why you want us in your dreams, but we are. We're there. We get it all. That's just one of the things that happens. Well, I'm glad we talked about the movie.
Yeah, it was. I really did enjoy it. I thought they did a nice job with it.
Yeah.
It was a fun discussion.
Gotta say that they worked really hard on it. You could tell it's quality.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I really do hope that they can get some nice appeal with it, because I thought that they put a lot of heart into it.
I need to call attention actually to its cover art. It's on the physical media, and they've used it in some of the other stuff because I think it's gorgeous and very creative with what they did. And I have to say that the person who designed the cover art was in the movie, and I love how brilliant it was that they put it into a sprue, and it's really cool.
Can you have it for the camera? By any chance?
Well, if you go to imdb.com and look up Miniature Wargaming, the movie, you can see their cover art right there. Or if you happen to be on any of their social media, I'm sure they have it there as well.
Cool. I'll take a look. I'm typing it right. I'm typing it in as we speak.
It's very neat with what they did there, and I love it. Very aesthetically pleasing when we're talking about artistic, views and so forth, and it's just a wonderful idea. Very neat.
All right. Well, I'll have to take a look because I'm not seeing the box art.
You should, and everyone else should as well. I would highly recommend that they do. It's quality.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, that is cool.
Isn't it nice? It's the sprue with the titles and everything, and
yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's very well done.
That is neat. That's a cool idea.
Well, people should check out Miniature Wargaming the movie. They're on all the social media things. It's on Kickstarter, which has already happened, but you can go and read information about it. It's on IMDb. If you've watched the film, you should leave a review on IMDb, help them get their rating to where you think it should be. And people like to look at those reviews and see what it is. And I know the director's paying close attention to that. And if you backed it, leave a comment on one of the Kickstarters. And we'd love to hear from you too. So if you want to get in touch with us about this or any other episode, you can do so. Send an email to jonathan@wargamingrecon.com. We're on all the things, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. You can find us Wargaming Recon and just give us a shout, a mention, a like, a whatever. And we'll see that and we can interact with you and read what you have to say about this. I'd love to know what you think about the movie. Maybe, just maybe, I'm really wrong and the movie doesn't end on a downer. Just maybe. And maybe Alex is just crazy and there's no such thing as too much sad piano. I don't know. It's up to you guys to let us know what you think about that. Are we just crazy or are we on point? Alex, thank you for being on this episode. We got to do this again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this episode. And I also want to remind you all, make sure you check out Alex's podcast. Alex, one more time, how can they get a hold of that?
Rogues in the House. It looks like everything's starting to go through, so you can find us on Spotify. I'm very confident at this point we'll be on iTunes shortly. And it seems like, as John says, where all quality podcasts can be found.
Awesome. So people should check that out. And like I said, we have a couple more new episodes coming and some best of before our season ends here for 2018 as we wind down. And then when the baby comes, things will be crazy and we'll be disappearing for a while. But we'll try to get onto social media to let you all know about that as that happens and what plans are. So there will be some adjustments for end of 2018 probably, and also for beginning of 2019. But once again, we want to thank everyone, our sponsors, our Patreon backers, all of you who listen, Alex, for taking the time to come on. And of course, everyone who was involved with Miniature Wargaming, the movie. It was, for me, a very emotional experience to watch it. And I just watched it again today and I want to go watch it again. So I think I know what I'm doing after this. It's good. It's very good. Well, no matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how many times you're watching Miniature Wargaming the movie or wishing, man, I could go buy Miniature Wargaming the movie, you have to. You need to keep on gaming.